The old man's cane clattered to the floor. 23 passengers watched him stumble down the bus aisle. His weathered hands gripped seatbacks. His faded jacket hung loose on his bent frame. "Sir, you need to move," the driver called out. "That's a priority seat." The old man didn't budge. He sat there, staring straight ahead, silent, stubborn. A pregnant woman stood in the aisle, one hand on her belly. She looked exhausted. The other passengers started murmuring. "What's wrong with you?" a businessman snapped. "Can't you see she needs that seat?" The old man's fingers tightened on his cane, still silent. "Hey!" A college student pulled out his phone. "This is going viral. Look at this selfish old fool." The driver's voice crackled over the intercom. "Sir, final warning. Move or get off my bus." The old man finally spoke. His voice was barely a whisper. "I paid my fare." That's when the shouting started. "Paid your fare?" The businessman's face turned red. "You think that gives you the right to be a complete jerk?" The college student's phone was already recording. "This is sick. Look at him. Just sitting there, while a pregnant lady stands." More phones came out. Camera flashes popped. The old man's hand trembled on his cane. A small American flag pin on his jacket caught the light. "Please," the pregnant woman said softly. "I just need to sit down." The old man looked at her. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Pain? Recognition? But he didn't move. "That's it." The driver pulled over. "Everyone off until this gets sorted." Passengers groaned. They had places to be. "This is your fault," a woman in scrubs hissed at the old man. "Some of us have jobs." The old man's shoulders sagged. His breathing grew shallow. But still, he didn't move. The bus doors opened with a hydraulic hiss. "Sir, you're getting off now." The driver stood up, his radio crackling. The old man struggled to his feet. His cane shook in his grip. Finally, someone muttered. He shuffled toward the front. Each step looked painful. His worn sneakers squeaked against the rubber floor. The pregnant woman had already taken the seat. She looked relieved but uncomfortable. The filming continued. "Wait till my followers see this," the college student said. #worstpersonever. The old man paused at the top of the steps. The afternoon sun hit his face. For a second, the lines around his eyes looked deeper, sadder. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Word travels fast in small towns. "That's him," a woman pointed. "The one who wouldn't give up his seat?" The old man stepped off the bus. The doors closed behind him with finality. He stood alone on the cracked sidewalk. Cars passed by. No one stopped. His cane found the ground. One step, then another. Walking away from the judgment. Walking toward whatever came next. The video went viral within an hour. Local news picked it up by evening. "Heartless senior refuses seat to pregnant woman." Comments poured in. "Disgusting. Where's his compassion? Someone should teach him manners." The old man didn't see the comments. He didn't have a computer, or a smartphone, or anyone to tell him what the world was saying. He lived alone in a small apartment above Miller's hardware store. The stairs creaked under his weight. The same 17 steps he'd climbed for 8 years. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, used to bring him soup, but she'd moved away last month. Now, it was just him and the silence. He heated a can of beans on his hot plate. The spoon clinked against the bowl. Outside, car doors slammed. Voices carried up from the street. Were they talking about him? His hand found the small wooden box on his nightstand. Inside, folded papers. A few medals. A photograph so old the edges had yellowed. He didn't open it tonight. The next morning, Jimmy Rodriguez was sweeping outside his barber shop when he saw the old man walking past. Jimmy was 73, Vietnam veteran. He'd seen the video, like everyone else. But something nagged at him. "Hey," Jimmy called out. "You okay?" The old man paused. Up close, Jimmy noticed things the video hadn't captured. The careful way he held himself. The alertness in his eyes despite his frailty. And that pin. That little American flag pin. "You served?" Jimmy asked quietly. The old man's jaw tightened. Long time ago. Which branch? A pause. Army. Jimmy nodded. He'd been Army too. There was something about the way the old man said it, the weight behind the word. What's your name, brother? The old man looked at him for a long moment. Frank. Just Frank. No last name. But Jimmy had a feeling, a veteran's instinct. This wasn't just some cranky old man. This was someone with a story. Jimmy couldn't shake the feeling. That night, he called his buddy Marcus Thompson, 79 years old, Korean war vet, sharper than men half his age. Marcus, you see that video? The old guy on the bus? Yeah, terrible thing. I met him today. Something's off. Off how? Jimmy described the encounter. The way Frank carried himself. The weight in his voice. You think he's hiding something? I think we all are. Question is what? Marcus was quiet. Then, you know what? I'm curious now too. Let me make some calls. The next day, Marcus reached out to Robert Hayes, 81, World War II veteran, one of the last living members of their local VFW post. Bobby, I need a favor. Can you check some records? Within a week, they'd made contact with veterans from 3 different wars, all asking the same question. Who was Frank? And why did his story feel so important? It took 2 weeks of digging. Phone calls to the VA, old military records, conversations with historians. Marcus found it first. Frank wasn't just Frank. He was Franklin Joseph Morrison, Sergeant First Class, 1st Infantry Division. Korea. 951,953. But that wasn't the stunning part. The stunning part came when Robert Hayes cross-referenced the name with Medal of Honor recipients. His hands shook as he read the citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. The 15th of August, 1952. Hill, 255. Frank Morrison had single-handedly held off an entire enemy platoon, saved 37 men, nearly died doing it. The Medal of Honor, the highest military honor in America. And Frank Morrison, the heartless old man from the bus video, had earned it. But there was more. After Korea, he'd re-enlisted. Vietnam, 2 tours. Silver Star, Bronze Star, with V device. Purple Heart, with oak leaf clusters. 3 wars. Dozens of commendations. A lifetime of service. And now he was being humiliated on social media for wanting to sit down on a bus. Jimmy, Marcus, and Robert met at the VFW hall. The American flag hung limp in the still air. The room smelled of coffee and old stories. We have to do something, Jimmy said. Damn right we do. Marcus spread out the paperwork. Look at this record. This man is a living legend. Robert's voice was steady but angry. While everyone's calling him heartless, do they know what heart looks like? This man has more heart in his little finger than all those keyboard warriors combined. They called other veterans. The network spread. Vietnam vets, Gulf War veterans, Iraq and Afghanistan vets. The story traveled through VFW halls and American Legion posts across 3 states. Within days, they had dozens of volunteers. The plan was simple. Find Frank Morrison, honor him properly, show the world who he really was. But first, they had to find him. Because after the bus incident, Frank had disappeared. It took another week to track him down. Frank had moved out of his apartment. The landlord said he'd left no forwarding address, just packed his few belongings and vanished. They found him at the county hospital. He'd collapsed on the street 3 days earlier. No ID, no emergency contacts, just a sick, elderly man alone in a hospital bed. The nurse said he'd been asking for a priest. Jimmy walked into the room first. Frank looked smaller under the white sheets, older, more fragile. Frank? The old man's eyes opened. He recognized Jimmy from the barber shop. Come to yell at me too? No, Frank, I came to salute you. And Jimmy did. A crisp military salute, right there in the hospital room. Frank's eyes widened. Then Marcus walked in. Another salute. Then Robert. And behind him, 23 other veterans. They filled the small room, uniforms and medals, American flags and photos, some in wheelchairs, some on canes, all standing at attention. Frank tried to sit up. "What? What is this?" Robert Hayes stepped forward. His voice was strong despite his 81 years. "Sergeant First Class Franklin Joseph Morrison, Medal of Honor recipient, Korean War, Vietnam War, Purple Heart, Silver Star, Bronze Star, with V device." Frank's face went white. "We know who you are," Robert continued. "The question is, why didn't you tell them?" The silence stretched like a held breath. Frank's hands found the white hospital sheet. His fingers traced the fabric. "Because..." His voice was barely audible. "Heroes don't demand seats." The room was so quiet you could hear the heartbeat monitors. "That pregnant lady, she reminded me of my Sarah, my wife." Frank's eyes filled. "She died in childbirth, 1954. Our first baby. I wasn't there. I was overseas." Jimmy felt his throat tighten. "I kept thinking, if someone had given Sarah a seat, if someone had been kind, maybe." Frank's voice broke. "Maybe things would have been different." "So you got up," Marcus said quietly. "I was going to. I was trying to. But my back, the pain." Frank wiped his eyes. "By the time I could move, everyone was so angry. And I thought, let them be angry at me. Let them think I'm the villain." At least, she got to sit down. The room full of warriors stood in stunned silence. "You took the blame," Robert whispered. "You let them destroy your reputation to protect hers." Frank nodded. "What's one more sacrifice?" 2 days later, the real story broke. Not on social media this time, on every major news network in America. The headline read, "Medal of Honor recipient lets himself be humiliated to help pregnant stranger." The original video was still there, but now people watched it differently. They saw an old warrior struggling with pain. They saw him gathering strength to stand. They saw him take the blame for something he was trying to fix. The pregnant woman, Sarah Martinez, came forward tearfully. "I never wanted this. If I had known who he was." "He didn't want you to know," Jimmy told her gently. "That's what heroes do. They serve in silence." Frank Morrison returned to his small apartment, but he wasn't alone anymore. Veterans visited daily. Neighbors brought meals. Children wrote letters. The bus company issued a formal apology and offered him free rides for life. He never used the offer, but every Tuesday, Jimmy Rodriguez would pick him up in his old Chevy. They'd drive to the VFW hall. They'd sit with other veterans. They'd tell stories. And sometimes, when the light hit Frank's face just right, you could see it. Not the frail old man from the viral video, but the young soldier who'd charged uphill 255, who'd saved 37 lives, who'd spent 70 years serving his country, who'd taken one final hit to his reputation to spare a pregnant woman the guilt of sitting while an old man stood. A hero's hero. Silent, sacrificial, unbroken. The American flag pin on his jacket caught the light. And finally, it seemed to shine.